So, what may be some of the disadvantages then in recording to an analog medium? The first one, and probably the biggest one, is that analog tape is a linear process. Now, when I say linear, what I mean is that actually the recording is on a piece of analog tape. So if you want to work on a piece of the song and it's at 5 minutes, and you know that that's the third chorus, chorus number 3, and that's where you want to work, and you're at the beginning of the tape, you have to fast forward or scroll through all of that tape. You have to move through the tape in a linear fashion to get to the spot that you want to record. Okay, that can be a real disadvantage if you are working on a recording and you have, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 orchestral musicians sitting in the studio. And you could easily spend 10, 20, 30% of your time fast forwarding and rewinding the tape to get to a particular location where you're recording. So, a disadvantage in analog recording is that it is a linear process. The only way to get to one section of the song or piece of tape is to scroll through or fast forward through all the tape that lies before it. One of the other things that would be a disadvantage is that tape is susceptible to degradation. You can think of all of the old tapes that were made in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Many of them no longer exist. They've essentially turned into dust. Tape has a shelf life, and so does the audio or film that may be recorded on it. So, a couple of things that will degrade the audio signal on a tape are usage. The more times you run your tape along the tape head to either record or play back, you're essentially wiping off some of the magnetic material that's storing the electrical impulses. And so the more you use the tape, the more it will degrade. Time will also degrade the tape because it's not a permanent medium. And the third thing that may degrade the tape is just the physical form of the tape. Now, you may go, well, what does that mean? Physical form of the tape. You saw in earlier recordings that analog tape is just a large 2-inch piece of tape, hundreds of feet wrapped around a reel. Okay? So if there's going to be degradation that occurs on the tape, most likely it's going to occur on the outside edges because those are the edges that come in contact with the reel the most, may come in contact with your fingers the most. And so that is an area which you can also get tape degradation. It usually occurs on the outside edges of the tape itself. Now, because of that, and because there's nothing really that the engineers could do to keep it from degrading on those outside edges, they came up with a solution, a workaround to help them. So if this is a 2-inch tape, a piece of 2-inch tape, and we're going to record onto that, we mentioned that the two areas that are going to receive the most wear and tear are these outside edges of the tape. And you may go, well, Todd, the easy solution here is to not record on the outside edges of the tape. Okay, leave the first 1 or 2 tracks free or open. Well, that is a possible solution, but that's not reality. In reality, the engineers, the musicians will suck up every piece of audio tape that they can get. Every track that they can get, they will use. And so even on a 2-inch piece of tape with 24 tracks, most musicians and engineers won't choose to exclude those outside edges or outside tracks from being recorded. They're going to use every available track. So that isn't an option. But what may be an option is to select or choose what you put on those tracks that might be least affected by tape degradation over time. So what might you put on an outside track? Well, I can tell you what you wouldn't put on the outside track. First, you wouldn't put the lead vocal. Well, why not? Well, because that's the most important part of the track. That's what's going to be the loudest in the mix, will be the lead vocal. And it's relatively constant. It's usually someone is singing the lead vocal through most of the song. So it's a consistent audio track that is also important. So most likely, you're going to have the vocal be recorded on one of the middle tracks. Kind of safeguard it, buffer it with other tracks around the outside of it. What things may you put on the outside tracks? Well, one thing you may put on the outside track would be time code. That's something, SMPTE time code. SMPTE time code is a time code that you can use to lock multiple machines together. It also is useful if you're locking your tape to a video, say if you're doing a film score or something like that. Another thing you may put out there on an outside track would be the click track. If your musicians are playing to a click or a steady metronome beat, you may put that out there because it doesn't really matter that much if that sound degrades over time. It's okay. It's not going to be heard in the final mix of the song anyway. So what would you put on these other tracks up here, these outside tracks? Well, what they used to put on there was kick drum or bass drum. It's the same thing, different name. The reason they would put that out there is because, first of all, it's a very strong signal. So if you lose some of the signal to degradation, you're probably still okay. Also, it doesn't play all the time. And, it's not as important as other things like the vocal. So the kick drum historically was placed on channel 1. And the amazing thing is that if you look at any modern Pro Tools sessions that people have, most of the time they'll have their sessions laid out so that the first track is the kick. Kick, snare, hat, toms, overheads, bass, guitars, piano, that type of thing. So for some of the reasons that we've discussed, some of the disadvantages, you may go, why would anybody record onto analog tape? And I don't think anybody would record on analog tape, you may say. Well, the fact of the matter is that a lot of people still record on analog tape. In spite of all of the disadvantages, a lot of people love the warmth, the roundness of tone, basically the distortion they're getting in their recording. They like that. So what a lot of bands, for example, will be to record on analog tape, and then when they have finished the recording, or finished most of the recording, they will transfer all of the audio from the analog tape onto a digital workstation so that they can do final editing and prep the piece for digital delivery. Foo Fighters' last project, I believe, was done, recorded on analog tape and then transferred to digital. So that happens, still a fair amount. It's a more expensive way to do things. It takes a little longer time to do a recording that way, but you may ultimately get more of the sound you're looking for by recording to analog. The reason that people don't is the ease of convenience and the cost factor. So those are reasons that people do and don't record on analog. So that's it for this segment on analog recording. And next we'll discuss the differences between digital and analog and some additional information about digital recording. Thanks.